Good evening, fellow entrepreneurs, small business owners, and side hustlers. My name is Ntokozo Hlatshwayo, and welcome once again to another exciting episode of the Business Forecast. That's right, it's the Entrepreneurs Podcast. It's the show that gets you connected to a wide array of successful entrepreneurs and really experienced business professionals to help you get your business to the next level. We've had amazing episodes and amazing guests, and we've learned so much, but it's still early, man. We've got so much learning yet to do. And today we have an exciting episode. Now, this episode is about how to build a successful manufacturing business in South Africa. Now, we know that building a manufacturing business in SA can actually be kind of hard and kind of intimidating. And we have today with us a person who has done it and has done it successfully. I am, of course, talking about Bonga Masoka. He has built a premium paint coating brand and manufacturing company and retail company in the country, and he's here to show us and tell us about how he did it. It's going to be so exciting. I'm really excited to have him on the show today. But before we get there, I just want to give a big shout out to Vugani M Productions. They're the ones who are responsible for our studio, our cameras, our lighting, and our whole setup. I just want to give them a shout out. And if ever you want to use them, make sure you do contact them. But today is all about you and your business and taking it to the next level. And as I said, our guest today is successful in what he has done. I believe they've already opened three stores, and they've got two underway. And they manufacture their own paint, as well as they've got stores that actually sell the paint. And on top of that, they've got a branch in their company where they go and actually paint people's houses. I mean, they do so much. That's why it's such an honor to have our guest with us today. Please help me welcome to the studio, Bonga Masoka. Mr. Masoga, it's so great it's so great to have you with us today. Thank you for agreeing to just share your journey with us and tell us how you got to your place of success. It's an honor to have you.
No, man, the honor is all mine. Thank you very much. I'm really, really, really humbled. It was exciting, man, to receive the invitation from you guys. Thank you very much.
No. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, you're shining the torch. You're an encouragement to so many people. And we thank you that you agreed to come here and share your knowledge with us. So, I mean, before we get into the questions, we just want to ask you to just tell us a bit about how you got to where you got to. I mean, just 30 seconds quickly so that we get a bit of a background. How did you get to a place where you're running a company that is manufacturing and selling paint products?
My name is Bonga Masoka. I was born in a village called Brits. It's outside a small town called in northwest called no, sorry, the village is called Madinyani actually. Outside a small town called Brits, and moved to Joburg when I was 10, I think. I think I was doing grade 4. Lived in Lanseria, went to a farm school, Blair Ethel. It was actually built by one of South Africa's famous golfer, get a player, and finished primary, went to Kwenamlapo High School, and dropped out of school in grade 9. Went to an FET, studied graphic designing and painting. Funny enough, and peer pressure got in the way. I dropped out in college after 6 months, stayed at home. And even the following year, I stayed at home trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was 15 at the time, 15 or 16, and decided to go back to school. Moved back to Northwest in Kwenamla or in Lethabile, and went to UCT, studied political science. Actually graduated in political science and public policy and administration. And worked with my building another manufacturing company. well, but understanding the mining industry, started coatings, and I'm still at it even today.
Phew, wow. That is such an exciting story. And I mean, it gives us a backdrop concerning, who you are. And I mean, I feel like these sorts of stories help because a lot of us who are watching can relate, that the road hasn't always been
Yeah,
smooth, or easy, but, still you made it to your place of success. So I feel like it's so encouraging always to get to know the background of somebody who has, who is doing well and who is being successful in their field. But I mean, just to get right into it now, I know for a fact that starting a manufacturing business in South Africa can be quite hard. I mean, if a lot of people have ideas for products, they want to make their own, I don't know, fizzy drinks or energy drink, they want to develop their own things, but it's so intimidating, to start a manufacturing business in South Africa. And it's one of the things, that has been plaguing a lot of small businesses, but yet you made it, right? You got to a place where you manufactured your own paint coatings and now you're selling them. So how did you get into a space where, you're in the manufacturing field and you're doing so well at it?
I actually stumbled on the opportunity. Um, so after varsity, we went into mining and in the rehabilitation space in the mining industry, and we we didn't really do well in that space. I mean, we were in the business for almost 2 years. So while at it, I came across a company that specializes in IP, intellectual property, in the chemicals space. Basically, it's an R&D company, and they offered they proposed the idea of paint manufacturing, or in fact, not even paint manufacturing, but just selling paint. And went back, did my research, and I saw a niche in the market, and went back to the tables with the company, and we talked about the transfer of skills, the manufacturing capability, and all of that. And yeah, that's how I got into the industry. But I didn't start with manufacturing. As much as I knew the end goal is to manufacture, manufacturing is a very capital intensive industry. And you need basically a lot of capital to start off and to sustain the business. So what I did is, because of also I didn't come from the industry or even construction for that matter, I wanted to give myself a little bit of time to learn, to understand the industry. So without investing significant amount of money on a business that is not proven, I started off as a reseller, you know, started off reselling the paint, buying it from the the R&D company, and then selling it to the customers. I mean, I remember at some point I would drive from Bonga to Soweto just to deliver one bucket of paint. Not viable financially, but because at the time the basis of what I was doing at the time was to understand the industry in general. And that's how I came about to build this business basically.
Phew. Wow. That is so interesting. It actually reminds me of what our second guest, Ukarabu Mashukhane, said. He actually
Yeah,
mentioned the fact that if you want to get into a business that is capital intensive or that you don't know that well, it's always better for you to start off gaining some sort of experience, either by being an employee or working for someone within that space, or gaining experience in one way or another. And through that, you can build networks and build connections that can actually help you get to the next level. So it's so interesting to hear somebody
yeah,
who's actually went that
yeah,
direction, because a lot of people are going to quit when they realize they can't, manufacture themselves. If they need money, they start asking for funding. When they don't get funding, they quit. But I love how your version of what Natin market research was actually getting into the space and actually starting to do something. And I love that so much. And then how did you move from that, to get to a place where now you're starting to manufacture? Did you still have to had like to get funding? How did that switch come along?
So so after, I mean, I think I ran that from 2017 until 2019. For the for 2 years, I was just basically reselling, moving paint from the manufacturer to the retailer to the client, and that's when I realized what the market actually needed. Funny, the market is not short of premium paint, you know. There's reliable or there's well established suppliers in the market. And what the market actually needed was a reliable and trustworthy painting company, and it added benefit for us because we manufactured our own premium paint, you know. So in a sense, it allowed us to not only provide the painting service, which is the most stressing problem for the customer, but also to introduce our product and back it by the fact that we are servicing you using our own products. So from that, I mean, from running between the manufacturer and the retail market and the client and the customers, we built a little bit of capital that allowed us to invest in a small garage size factory, you know. But in addition to that, it allowed me what data to start convincing a few friends that there's value in what we're doing, or there's value in this business model that I'm trying to build. And I mean, I've been fortunate enough. Friends came in with different resources, and it's funny that we always talk about access to capital or access to resources, and we look at financial institutions or government institutions, and we forget that friends and family to a large extent have the resources that we need. I mean, um, when I started, I didn't even have a car. You know, it was friends and family who would come in and say, "No, use my bike, use this, use this, use that." And so we pulled in whatever available resources at the time, and we built the first factory, or we built our initial factory in 2019. And yeah, we've been building from then onwards up until now.
Wow, I love that. I
Yeah.
mean, that's new to me, because personally, I was also one of those people wondering if I wanted to start, to manufacture a product, where would I start? But I love the fact that, you took that initiative to, bridge that gap, and you made some money, and then you started somewhere. And I feel like that's something that a lot of South Africans, can take encouragement with, and what you're saying about friends and family. I feel like you were watching, our second guest, because that's another thing that he pointed out, as a good place to start. But that's really awesome, when it comes to how to start. I feel like it's a unique way, but if other people follow it, it will really help them. But just tell us now,
Yeah.
what are some of the projects that you've worked on, that have led, or maybe talk about the highlights when it comes to some of the big projects that you've worked on, and how did they come about?
I mean, we've worked on almost every project, every house that you can think of. You know, we started off with your one room RDP house, and I give credit to that market, because those are the guys that pulled us into the market. They pulled us into the industry. And so from your RDP sized houses, we moved to your township sized house. Then we started painting cosmopolitans. Then next thing you know, we were in suburbs doing a little bit of commercial projects. And yeah, so I mean, we've done some of the celebrities that you probably are aware of, your DJ Zintle, Dando Duma's mom. We painted a house. We've done Didi and Brendan Praise, um, Bumi and Brendan Praise, sorry, and Vongai. We just recently did Vongai, and those are beautiful influencers or beautiful brands in the influencing space. And so yeah, I guess they believed, or we built a business, a brand that is good enough for them to trust in it and allow it to service them, I suppose.
Phew. Wow, that's major. That is not small at all. Wow, well done, for getting to that place. And I love the way you're answering, because in each question, you're highlighting some of the conversations that we've had in the past
Yeah,
when it comes to, how to get to where you got to. And I feel like, it goes away then from saying all I need is funding, and starts showing people all the various elements that need to come into place for you to be
yeah,
successful, even in the manufacturing industry. But then we know then, Guti, there are always challenges, and especially when it comes to a manufacturing business, because as you said, it's capital intensive and all
yeah.
those other things. What are some of the challenges that you faced, and some of the challenges that that other people who are trying to get into manufacturing, are facing right now?
Yeah. Um, Manufacturing is very complex, you know. I mean, often we talk about lack of access to funding, but in manufacturing, it's a little bit different in a sense that before you even get to manufacturing, or before you even get to the actual product that you need to manufacture, taking into consideration our background as a country, you need first to have access to the know-how or the information, or whether you want to call it intellectual property. Take for instance paint. You don't just wake up and say I want to manufacture paint. This is something that is chemistry intensive. It requires a lot of tools, expensive tools. It requires quality control measures, skilled labor, machinery. So those are things that capital can assist you to acquire. But first and foremost, you need to have access to that knowledge. And again, going back to the context of where we come from as a country, the majority of us don't have access to that. So how do we bridge the gap of access to information? I mean, if you look at institutions such as Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, which is a state-owned entity, they're sitting on tons and tons of IPs that are not being commercialized. And if we want to address the issue of manufacturing in the country, let's start with making those IPs accessible to the public,
Hmm.
especially to young people. And after that, we can now start talking about access to funding. And I think the government is becoming a little bit more not even considerate, but it's becoming more interested in investing in manufacturing capabilities, especially looking at government programs such as the Black Industrialist Program, and looking at the recent signed AFTA, African Free Trade Agreement. South Africa is pushing a lot of young manufacturers to exploit the free trade agreement within the continent. So, in that regard, I could easily assume that funding is starting to relax, it's starting to become more available, but we need to solve the issue of access to information first and foremost. So
Wow.
like I said, for me, access to information was something that I bumped into. It came by default. But to someone else who's equally passionate about manufacturing, for instance, paint, that know-how, or that knowledge might not necessarily be available or at their disposal. So how do we solve that issue? How do we bridge that gap? And then afterwards, we can start talking about um, capital, access to funding. So for me, the journey hasn't so the journey hasn't really been um it has its own challenges, but I think it's challenges that every entrepreneur goes through. It's irrespective of which industry. There are certain things that you will experience as an entrepreneur, moments where you feel like giving up, moments where business is not making sense. It's a little bit stretched for those who don't have access to funding, but yeah, my problems has been more or less understanding the business, creating a business model that works, finding a fit within the market, and creating systems that promote efficiency in the business. I mean, even if I had access to funding, I probably would have blew it off at some point because I didn't really understand what I was doing, you know? And that's the problem with, I mean, I read an article some other time and they were saying that the article said that um, people who start businesses with excess in funding are most likely to fail than those who start business without funding at all. You know, so yeah.
Wow. Oh, that is incredible. Thank you for that. Sure, access to funding versus access to information. I've never thought of it that way. I mean, you ask any entrepreneur, they'll tell you, nah, man, give me access to funding versus access to
Yeah,
information. But the
yeah,
way you've just put it there, it's so interesting, man. I mean,
yeah,
I wonder how many people who are wanting to go into manufacturing know about some of those institutions that you spoke about, and maybe if
yeah,
they knew about those institutions and maybe other access to access to other sorts of information about their industry in particular, then the
yeah,
journey will
yeah,
probably be that much easier for them. And I
yeah,
love that. And I feel like, I mean, we already know that access to funding is hard. Maybe
yeah.
people should now start focusing on access to information and get as much information as possible, and
Because
yes, sir.
yeah, so I mean, if you look at it from a different perspective, information is a commodity on its own. You know, the fact
Hmm.
that I can manufacture paint and I know how to manufacture paint, it's value on its own, whether I have access to funding or not. You know, and in addition to that, we also need to address the issue of access to shelf space because that's a huge problem. You
Hmm.
have access to information, then you have access to funding, but you don't have shelf space because I mean the economy talks as build a narrative that we need access to market, and we talk about access to market now and then, but I've actually discovered that it's not really access to market that we need, it's market access to our products. The market is readily available to buy, if for the lack of better word, black owned products. But because of they don't have easy access to those products, then it becomes difficult for us to reach the market. If you look at the two brands, Part 2 and Drip, if they focused on accessing shelf spaces that are already established, instead of building shelf space for themselves, then they would actually build to where they are shelf space for themselves. And those are building our stores. We literally just creating shelf space for ourselves. Um, the politics and economics of shelf space is just too long for it. Will probably require another 7 hours, to just talk about. But at least with the digital space and e-commerce, we now start having more products reaching the market without going through the traditional shelf spaces.
That's powerful. I like that because again, somebody only looks at access to finance, and now you're looking, you're introducing something that is new, access to shelf space as well as access to information. And I mean, if you don't have finance, at least these are some of the things that you can start looking into when you're starting out. And it makes me wonder. There's another question I wanted to ask you. I mean, you said you gathered all this money, from the projects that you were doing, and then you were able to, hook yourself up with a little garage there, and you start doing, your own manufacturing and things along those lines. And I'm assuming, obviously, then you also had to buy the machinery that was involved in all of that stuff. And these are some of the things that add to manufacturing being capital intensive. And
Yeah,
in America now, I know there's these things called co-packers or co-manufacturers where, if you've
yeah.
got a product, you go to them and they already have the factory. You're basically renting factory space from them. Are there such things in South Africa? And if so, do you know of any?
I'm not sure if I get the question. Do you mean as in co? shared spaces or co-manufacturing. So, for instance, Splash would be the main manufacturer, and different brands would come to Splash for manufacturing. Are you referring to that?
Yeah.
In South Africa, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there is. In the paint industry, it's at large scale. I'm not sure about the retail level. For instance, you come and say, I want to start my own brand, and we manufacture 10, 20, 50 buckets for you, and then we manufacture for the next person. I'm not sure if we have that in South Africa, but if not, then maybe it's something that we should be looking into. It will reduce the hassle of access to knowledge, as we spoke, as we discussed, and also reduce the reliance and demand for access to capital.
Exactly. I love the way you
Yeah,
put that at the end, that it will reduce the reliance on access to capital. And I mean, it
yeah,
will all come if I feel like if we can come together, and it goes back to why we have this show where we're trying to get all these entrepreneurs together to put our heads together to find ways to overcome these hurdles together. Because if
yeah,
for example, I'm manufacturing my own energy drink, and there's already someone who's maybe a small business who's manufacturing, it would be great if they, let us use, or we just give them, for example, our recipe, and they produce certain amounts
yeah.
of these fizzy drinks for us. Then I mean, I feel like those sorts of relationships in any industry will really reduce the barriers to access those
To
markets. Do
enter.
you think, yeah, to entry, sorry, yeah, do you
Yeah,
think that's
yeah.
feasible? That's something that people who are in various manufacturing spaces can start looking into.
I think it's visible. It's viable. I mean, the shared economy is still at its infancy, especially in Africa, and but at the end of the day, it's inevitable. And shared economy is not only focusing on um, reducing it's not only focusing on saving capital basically, but it's also focusing on, let me give you an example with Splash. When I started, I didn't manufacture, you know. Someone manufactured for me, or a certain company manufactured for me, and that allowed me to invest in building a certain experience that I want to attach to the brand. And I think we are slowly going to an economy that is becoming more brand conscious than product driven. If you look at the Uber, for instance, of this world, they are more focused on giving the passenger or the client a beautiful experience compared to the product itself. They don't care about owning cars. They just want to focus on that. And I think that's the future of the economy. That's the future of where the global economy is going. We're going to have a lot of people competing on providing certain experiences and capitalizing on that. So it's inevitable. We're going there. Maybe Splash could be one of the first companies to provide that. Definitely something that we wouldn't mind looking into. But it would allow us to actually invest into building brands, so that we can be competitive. If you look at America, for instance, they don't concern themselves with manufacturing. They've exported their manufacturing to China to a large extent, which has subsequently allowed them to focus on building a brand. If you look at Apple, a typical example, it's not manufactured in the US, but it's a US $1 trillion business. So maybe even in Africa, South Africa in particular, we would adopt to such business models with time.
Sure. I really, really love. I mean, I can tell that this is your field. You've got such a wealth of knowledge around that, and I also do believe that such a shared, economic drive would really benefit our country. I mean, I was speaking to one professor, and he was just mentioning how one of the issues with Africa, and I'm not saying that we caused this. I mean, we've got such a difficult past, but one of the issues is that we are such a consuming continent, right? Versus
Yeah.
being a producing continent. We consume so much, yet we don't produce enough. And most of what we even consume is not even produced by us. Even
Yeah.
in the farming space, you look at farming, I mean, we've got so many farmers with so many farm animals, but they can't even sell them. Yet we import so much meat, and that's the problem a lot with our country or with our continent even. And I feel like then it becomes worse because now let's say we articulate this to people and say, look, let's start producing our own things and stop being consumers or stop importing so much. I feel like the
Mm,
person would answer and say, but then I don't have the money to start producing.
mm,
Yes,
mm,
we want to
mm,
enter the production stage, but we can't because it's so hard. The barriers to entry, or are so tough. And I feel
mm,
like then if we are going to be the generation, in terms of the small business generation that actually starts becoming more producing in nature, we have to
mm.
start investigating these ways of making production easy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I mean, if you look at our economic outlay, about 50% of our GDP comes from finance and service related sectors, you know? And for an economy like South Africa that has almost 40% unemployment rate, slightly more if you take the disgruntled and those who have stopped looking for work. And the majority of that unemployment unemployed market is predominantly unskilled or they don't have a skill at all, you know. So how do you which sectors, if you look at primary, secondary and tertiary, which sectors are most likely to uptake the majority of this unemployed labor force? And it's manufacturing. Currently we're relying on the primary sector, which is your mining and agriculture, and there's only so much that they can do. But because of we have exported, or rather we haven't even exploited our manufacturing capability, it means that now we've got this pool, the missing middle in this case. The missing middle in this case is those who cannot be uptaken by the primary sector, which is your mining and your agriculture, or the tertiary sector, which is high skill intensive, or yes, high skill intensive, your service and financial sectors. The manufacturing sector, and if you look at, I mean, the case of your Asian tigers, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, and Hong Kong, how they were able to build their economies from the 1950s up until now is because they invested intensively in industrialization slash manufacturing. Now, this is what we need to start driving. This is the narrative that we need to start driving. I mean, we've got a very strong financial sector that could finance some of this. Do we really need to import plastic when some of those basic raw materials come from Sasol? And Sasol
Hmm.
is one of the biggest companies in the world, you know? So we can't be importing plastic at this stage in our life and time. And those are probably maybe industries that the new generation or the new breed of entrepreneurs are going to start exploiting. I mean, um, if you look at Splash, for instance, the basic material for paint is a polymer, and that's the same material that you use in manufacturing plastics, car bumpers, and all of those. So maybe these are industries that Splash will go to exploit in the near future. But to just add on to what you're saying, yes, we need to start focusing on manufacturing for a number of reasons. For a number of reasons.
Hmm. Wow, I love that. You sound like you've actually studied this industry. I'm so glad, and I'm happy that you're just being so open, honest, and pouring out your heart when it comes to these things because these are serious issues.
Yeah,
And one of the reasons why we created this show was to give people the honest truth about what's happening in the business sector, the small business sector in South Africa. And these are some of the things that people need to know about, have their eyes open about, and come together, discuss, criticize, and actually create new things. Because if we want to be, a great economy going forward, I feel like, these sorts of talks, we need to have them, and take them to the next level.
yeah,
And that's why I'm
yeah.
enjoying, our conversation. And, now it brings us to the end, now we're at the end. of it, and sadly, but I feel like there's a lot of good value that people will derive from what we were discussing.
Yeah.
But I just want to ask now, maybe let me get to the one where when it comes to the information that you spoke about, that access to information is so important. I know you've mentioned a few, maybe you can just mention them again, or any others that you know about that people can look into when it comes to gaining access to information when it comes to manufacturing.
Um, let's take for instance you wanted to manufacture paint. There's SAPMA, South African Paint Manufacturers Association. So I think we need to, and I'm saying this out of experience, two or three people who have reached out and say, I want to manufacture. Can you teach me? And I would ask, what background do you have, or what research have you done on your own? And people would say nothing. And we can't, if we want to grow as a nation, we need to be a whole lot proactive. Let's go out there and do our own research. Paint manufacturing, just put in paint manufacturing on Google and look at what comes out. A lot of information. And I'm just saying that for people to be aware that information is widely available. And I'm using paint because that's where I'm from. But there are other products that someone is thinking about. Just do research. If you're not getting anywhere, there are associations and institutions that govern that particular industry that you're trying to exploit. But over and above, there's the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. It's a state-owned entity, does a lot of research in partnership with colleges, universities across the country, and they've got extensive wealth of knowledge, and maybe that's another avenue or another point that you could reach out to and see if they might lead you somewhere. But doing research is far more important. There are journals, and journals are widely available. Yeah.
Wow. No, thank you for that. I think like that's one of the most important things that we need to be as small business owners is more proactive than anyone else, because we are
Yeah.
trying to build something that is new and we can't be laid back in what we're trying to do. So I really do thank you for encouraging, our viewers in that direction, and for telling us, some of the one you just told us about today. But yeah, I mean, sure. I can't believe it's already time up, and it's been great. It's been a wealth of information and knowledge that we've received from you. We want to say thank you so much. I mean, not only for being an example for other young entrepreneurs, young Black entrepreneurs out there. You're doing your thing. We're watching, we're learning, we're being inspired. Such platforms, I hope you get more of them so that you can inspire more and more people. But just before you go, maybe you can tell us a bit about where people can catch you as Splash Africa, Splash Coatings Africa, and maybe somebody wants to use your services or buy your products. Where can they reach you?
On social media, Splash Coatings Africa, and we are on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or you can browse through our website www.splashafrica with the k.co.za, or reach out to the office 079 508 9305. And yeah, I mean, I'm open to anything, man. Drop us a WhatsApp, drop us an email, we'll respond and assist wherever we can. But in terms of painting, we are readily available to paint your house into a home that you deserve.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Bonga Masoka, for joining us today and sharing so much knowledge and a wealth of wisdom with us and practical lessons, which really is what we're all about. So hopefully we'll get you back here soon, when we want to talk about such a topic again. But for today, we want to say thank you. We want to say goodbye and want to wish you all the best on your business endeavors.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the invitation.
All right, thanks, sir. Bye then.
Sure. Bye.
Well, that was quite amazing, I must say. Sometimes you bring in someone who's doing well in something, but they're not able to communicate it. But one of the reasons we brought Bonga in is his ability to really open up his heart and communicate the actual practical points of what he's doing. And I mean, I feel like today I learned so much. I might start, manufacturing a product of my own tomorrow because of so much, that he taught us today. And I'm really, really grateful to him. And I'm grateful to everybody who was able to join us today. And yeah, that's the end of the show today. And I just want to remind everyone that we do want, we want to use this platform to advertise your businesses. Every week we want to advertise 10 small businesses. And after that, actually, there's another platform where we continue to advertise your businesses, but we need you to send through your logos, to send through, your business information so that you can use this platform to advertise your business, because we have not been getting many of those. That is why we are skipping the next two segments for today, but we will be back with them next week. But do make sure also that you catch me every Monday at 10 past 2. I now have a slot on Hope Alive radio station. And basically, what we do on Hope Alive radio station for 30 minutes, we take a topic that we have discussed here with a guest and we get more into it. We delve more into it. We scrutinize it and we take out the practical lessons from it. So please make sure every Monday you go on to Hope Alive radio. If you want to know, I'm going to put there in the comment section, I'm going to just put a link so that you can make sure that you catch me. It's really been great over the past few weeks since we started doing it, and I hope you will be with us on the next one. But that is all that we have for today. I'm Towoza Shatwayo. The show was brought to you by Filigree Innovations. Filigreenet.com is where you can find us. But until next week, keep pushing, stay busy, and I wish you all the best for your business endeavors. Cheers.